When I think about summer movies, I don't mean every film that came out in a calendar year. For me, summer starts in May. That's when blockbuster season begins. That's when theaters get loud. That's when you feel the buzz in the air. May is where the summer movie season starts, period. And from that point on, this summer turned into one of the best ones we've had in years. There were shockingly good sequels, horror films that actually managed to scare me, and superhero movies that didn't just feel like content, they felt like events again. I saw a ton of movies these last few months, but these 10 stood above the rest. So let's break it down, my top 10 movies of the summer. Coming in at number 10 is The Bad Guys 2. Let me be completely real here, I did not like the first movie at all. It felt like it was trying way too hard to be slick, stylish, and funny, but it just didn't land for me. It was one of those animated films where you walk out thinking, okay, that existed, but I'll never think about it again. So when they announced the sequel, I was already writing it off in my head. I didn't care, I didn't think it was needed, and I figured it was just DreamWorks squeezing out another franchise. But wow, this sequel caught me off guard. From the very first act, I could tell it was different. The humor landed better, the pacing was smoother, and the animation had this new energy that made everything pop. The characters that annoyed me in the first film actually became enjoyable here, and I found myself grinning through the story. That's rare when a sequel not only surpasses the original, but makes you rethink your stance on the series entirely. I walked in with low expectations, and I walked out impressed. That's the kind of surprise that deserves a spot on this list. Number 9, we have Together, which is easily one of the best body horror films I've seen in years. Now, body horror is tricky. It's not just about showing gore or shocking visuals, it's about creating discomfort, making you feel your own skin crawl, and getting under your nerves in a way that sticks. Together absolutely nailed that. It had imagery that was haunting, set pieces that I didn't want to look at but couldn't look away from, and an atmosphere that clung to me long after I left the theater. It reminded me of the classics of the genre, movies like The Fly or The Thing, where you're not just grossed out, you're disturbed in a deeper psychological way. And that's what makes horror work for me. It's easy to do jump scares, it's harder to make me think about a film days later, replaying images in my head. Together managed that, and that's why it earns its place here. Number 8 is Thunderbolts, and I honestly can't believe I'm saying this, but this was one of the best MCU films ever made. Marvel has been on such a weird streak lately. Some highs, a lot of lows, and a lot of movies that just felt like filler. But Thunderbolts had purpose. It had an edge to it that felt fresh, and it gave us characters worth rooting for. When I sat down for this one, I wasn't expecting much. I figured it would be another average Marvel entry. Fine but forgettable. Instead, I walked out thinking, okay, they've still got it. This movie balanced the humor, the action, and the emotional weight in a way that reminded me of the MCU at its peak. It felt alive, and the best part, it didn't feel like it was just setting up the next 10 projects. It worked as its own thing, a standalone that still tied into the bigger picture but didn't sacrifice its own story. That's something Marvel's been missing for a while, and Thunderbolts brought it back. Coming in at number 7 is Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Now, when I first saw this movie, I thought it was flawless. I literally had it ranked as my number 1 movie of the year at that time. It was the only film I gave a full 10 out of 10 to. That first viewing was pure adrenaline. Tom Cruise was doing insane stunts, the pacing felt relentless, and the tension was sky high. I walked out thinking, this is the ultimate Mission Impossible movie. But then I went back for a second viewing, and on that rewatch, I started to see some cracks. The pacing dragged a little in spots, a couple of the story choices didn't hold up as strongly, and it wasn't quite the perfect masterpiece I thought it was. But here's the thing, even with those those flaws, it's still one of the best films in the franchise. Mission Impossible movies operate on a level that most action films can't touch, and this was no exception. It's bold, it's big, and it's proof that Tom Cruise is still the last great action star who's literally willing to risk his life for our entertainment. And that alone makes it incredible. Number 6 is Nobody 2. Let me tell you something. I adored the first Nobody. It was one of those movies that came out of nowhere, where you go in not expecting much and you walk out floored. Bob Odenkirk proved he could be an action star, and the film became an instant favorite for me. So when they announced the sequel, I was nervous. Lightning rarely strikes twice, but somehow they did it. Nobody 2 doesn't just hold its own, it actually rivals the original. The action was brutal, the humor hit harder, and the pacing was just perfect. Odenkirk once again knocked it out of the park, and it cemented this series as one of the best action franchises going right now. I honestly couldn't believe how good it was. Coming in at number 5 is F1, and let me tell you, this was not just a movie, it was an experience. From the moment the engines roared, I felt like I was transported. The sound design shook the theater, the visuals were stunning, and they felt the speed in my bones. It reminded me of Top Gun Maverick in the sense that it wasn't just telling a story, it was putting me in the driver's seat. I've seen plenty of racing movies before, but nothing has ever captured the intensity, the adrenaline, and the pure spectacle of this sport like F1. It's the kind of movie you have to see in the theater with the biggest screen and loudest speakers possible, because that's the only way to feel it. This was cinema as an event, and it's an experience I'll never forget. Number 4, we have Final Destination Bloodlines. Now this was a return I wasn't sure I needed, but I'm so glad we got it. I've always loved the Final Destination series. It's creative, it's fun, and it has this mix of horror and humor that's just addictive. But it's been a long time since the franchise felt relevant. Bloodlines changed that. It was one of the best entries in the series, bringing back everything we love about these films while still finding ways to make it fresh. The kills were creative, the tension was there, and death felt terrifying again. It was a reminder of why this franchise became so popular in the first place. Watching it felt like reconnecting with an old friend, and it was such a joy to see this series firing on all cylinders again. Coming in at number 3 is Weapons, and wow, this film blew me away. I already loved Barbarian, which was one of the most inventive horror films of the last few years, but Weapons took it to the next level. It's scarier, smarter, and even more daring. The way it played with audience expectations was masterful. You think you know where it's going, and then it completely flips the script. The atmosphere was suffocating, the scares landed perfectly, and I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. It's rare for a horror film to feel this fresh and this terrifying, but Weapons managed it. For me, it's not just one of the best horror films of the year, it's one of the best of the decade. Number 2 is Fantastic Four First Steps. Finally, Marvel gave the Fantastic Four the movie they deserve. For years, this team has been mishandled, misused, or just completely wasted. But this movie made them count. It gave us a story that was emotional, epic, and fun in all the right ways. The chemistry between the team worked beautifully, the action was exciting, and it felt like the MCU remembered how to make movies that matter. I came so close to putting this at number 1 because it was everything I wanted. It's easily one of the best MCU movies of all time, and it is the first Fantastic Four film that actually did justice to Marvel's first family. Finally, coming in at number 1 is James Gunn's Superman. Now this movie wasn't perfect. The comedy was a little overused and it felt overstuffed at times. But you know what? None of that mattered to me because of the way this film made me feel. It was inspiring, it was emotional, and it reminded me why I love superhero movies in the first place. James Gunn found the heart of Superman and he put it on screen in a way that resonated with me deeply. This wasn't just another comic book movie, it was one of the greatest of the 2020s so far. It's the kind of film that made me walk out of the theater with a huge smile, buzzing with excitement, and thinking, this is why I love movies. For me, this was the crown jewel of the summer. This summer was packed with surprises, from sequels that outdid the originals to horror films that pushed the genre forward, and superhero movies that actually mattered again. It reminded me of the magic of going to the theater, of sitting down in a dark room with a crowd of strangers and being blown away together. That's what summer movies are all about. Those were my picks, but now I want to know yours.